men's 100-meter dash at the Olympic trials is officially over. And right about now, Noah Lyles winning the event has to be the leading story, because he's the reigning world champion and dominated the event in every single round, while flashing Yu-Gi-Oh cards along the way. If for some reason you happen to pay attention to anybody else, it was probably Kenny Bednarik or Fred Curley. But probably Fred Curley because he's a little bit more interesting, because he's unattached at this very moment because he split ways with Asics, which is another conversation that I'm really not getting into right now. And what all those men have in common is that they've already won Olympic medals in their career. The truth is that if you are an American sprinter, but you never actually make it to the Olympics, forget about actually get a medal while you're there, then you probably might as well be invisible to almost any casual track and field fan. And that is a shame, because just getting to the Olympic trials is one of the hardest things to do if you are an American sprinter, because we have so many fast men that we can't possibly send them all to the games. And if you are paying very close attention to the 100-meter dash and actually watch the races through the rounds, then you should have noticed that Kobe Hilton is one of those fast men. He's a 100-meter sprinter without a legitimate pro sponsor who is still there on the starting line. And he even made it to the semi-final round. And I can't even blame the announcers much for ignoring him, because he really wasn't a favorite to make the final. But that's also because he was never under any circumstances supposed to be this fast. Yet he's been winning races over in Europe during this outdoor season, and he even made his Diamond League debut. The reality is that pro track and field is way harder than most people realize, because in the eyes of most fans, if you're not first, then you're last. But when an athlete like Kobe claws his way all the way from the bottom of the totem pole up to the Olympic trials semi-final round, you've got to put some respect on his name. And if you don't know his story, then allow me to fill you in, because it is abundantly clear that nobody believed he was going to make it this far. If they did, they probably would have recruited him in the first place, and he'd definitely have a real sponsor by now. But if you're new here, I have to say thank you for even making it this far into the video. And I'm Coach Rob, the founder of SCArecruiting.com, where I rank the best high school track and field recruits in the entire nation. And if anything that I say actually connects with you, it is always greatly appreciated if you would please like and subscribe. But if I don't, just let me know in the comments section, because I try to read them all. If you actually noticed Kobe Hilton running at the trials, you might have seen that he was wearing a singlet for a club named Tracksmith. But that must have literally just happened at some point within the last 6 months. They're actually a brand new apparel company, yet on their own website, they claim to make gear for athletes whom they refer to as non-professional but still competitive. If that's true, then I guess that's why Kobe Hilton was wearing it. And before he competed at the trials, he won races over in Europe, both in Austria and in France, while also competing in Germany and Sweden. The way that he is funding all of this, I honestly couldn't begin to tell you, because unattached athletes in track and field are very much a thing. And if you've been watching the Olympic trials, you should have noticed that by now. Simply put, very few American track athletes actually get sponsored by a company like Nike or Adidas. Many of them have to foot the bill to compete on their own. Best case scenario, they get with an actual track club to help them train. But even still, you're really not getting paid like that. Eric Holt, who entered the Olympic trials as one of America's best milers, said it best, that in the sport of track and field, he doesn't really make money. He loses money, because the gear that he's wearing is basically the same stuff that he has to buy himself. And although I'm sure he wants to make the Olympic Games, he said that his biggest goal is to run impressively enough just to get sponsored at all. But that is likely because he is just like Kobe Hilton. He was never supposed to be as fast as he is right now. At the high school level, Kobe only would have rated as a 2-star level recruit on SCArecruiting.com at the end of his senior year. That was in Minnesota, but he went on to compete at South Dakota State University. And by the time he was a junior, he had worked his way up from not even competing at the conference championship to sweeping the conference in the short sprints in the 100, 200, and 4x1 outdoors. But that was in the Summit League Conference for Division I, where unless you go to a school that is actually in that conference, you probably don't even know that it exists. And if I'm gonna keep being honest, the most interesting thing that he did during his college career was leading South Dakota State in the 4x1 to the NCAA championship meet, which is not supposed to happen for anybody in the Summit League Conference. It's so hard to do that it's really surprising that he didn't make the NCAA championships, either indoors or outdoors, for his entire career. He did just barely miss out on making it as a senior, but after all that, he chose to keep running after college, but of course, without any sponsors. Yet this is where the story gets interesting, because from then until now, Kobe Hilton has turned himself into one of America's fastest men. Even if you don't notice it, he didn't make the Olympic trials back in 2021, but every single year since then, he has been at the USA Championships, either indoors or outdoors, sometimes both. He even made the indoor 60-meter dash final in 2022 and again in 2023. Ironically, he only failed to do it in 2024 after having one of his fastest seasons ever. And at this point in his career, he has made it very clear that he is still on a journey to break 10 seconds in the 100-meter dash, although he's gotten dangerously close multiple times. Whether or not Kobe Hilton made Team USA in the 100 is really not the point, because he was never supposed to be this fast. Fast enough to get on the starting line next to Christian Coleman and Noah Lyles and Fred Kerley to begin with. He was a two-star recruit whom nobody really was checking for out in Minnesota, who chose to go to South Dakota State, which is technically in D1, but nobody's paying attention to. To clarify, two-star recruits aren't even supposed to dominate in a conference like the Summit League. But by the time he was done, he was not only sweeping the sprints at that level, he led his team to the NCAAs. And now, he is one of America's fastest men, with nobody sponsoring him to do it, except Tracksmith. Although making the Olympics is a very big deal, simply getting on the starting line at the trials in the men's 100-meter dash is just about as hard as making it to the games for just about anyone else around the world. It is true that Kobe won't be racing in Paris later this year, but it is also true that nobody years ago would have ever expected that the men who will would have had to go through him in order to get there. Because regardless of whether or not we were paying attention, he was never supposed to be this fast to begin with. SCA Track and Field gear is here. Fast is a lifestyle, and what you wear should reflect that. Order yours at scarecruiting.com/shop, or use the link in the description below. It's a huge support to me and this channel, so I can continue to make you more content like this. And remember, it is always greatly appreciated if you would please like and subscribe.